The cramped chamber contained nearly 100 snakes and poisonous insects. Some had been chopped up or were missing their heads. The rest were crawling around slowly because the temperature was rather low. How stupid can you be? Maomao wondered what they had expected by using snakes in winter. These animals might even have been hibernating at this point. Of course they moved slowly. For someone as experienced at catching snakes as Maomao was, it could not have been simpler to grab them and wring their necks. The bugs were not moving any faster. Wouldn't you expect the snakes to eat the bugs anyway? Some of the dumb frogs greedily went after the toxic insects, then fell flat from the poison. Maomao had first killed the dangerous venomous snakes, using the hairpin like a gimlet and the hair stick she'd received from Jinchi as if it were a dagger. They must have struggled to catch enough of them at this time of year, though. Most of the serpents in the box were harmless, non-venomous creatures. About half of the insects and frogs were poisonous. Maomao wanted to taste a few of those poisons, but now wasn't the right time. She needed to deal with the clearly venomous snakes first. After that, she would consider the ones she wasn't certain about. Maomao left the harmless snakes alone. Snakes did not usually go out of their way to attack people, and they weren't exactly moving quickly. Nonetheless, Maomao wasn't eager to have snakes wrapping themselves around her in the cramped quarters, so she sat on top of the box they had been held in and scattered ashes around it. She always carried medicine with her, tucked into the folds of her robes. That was simply her way. She would have preferred tobacco, but given the circumstances, burning some particularly pungent herbs and scattering them was the best she could do. She borrowed the lamp instead of using a proper fire. The guard was looking at her as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "I didn't even need to show up," he groaned. "Yes, why are you here anyway?" she asked. He looked a bit sullen. "Miss Suhari and the brat asked me to come. They said it was because you were stuck in here so we weren't being punished." "The young man wouldn't stop talking about me rescuing you. He said he would give me this." The guard was holding a jade ornament. It was a fairly rich reward, actually. Then he looked around and his face was pale. "I have to hand it to you." "I would have gone crazy in here. I don't think I would have lasted very long. Miss Suhari said I should get out of here quickly. She said something dangerous is going to happen." The folds of the guard's robes were noticeably puffed out. It looked like he had just come from looting a burning building. When Maomao looked outside, she discovered a man unconscious on the ground. It appeared her former guard had caused this. "I think you should run too," her rescuer said. "The smoke signal has already gone up." "Smoke signal?" Maomao asked. "Yes," the rescuer replied. "It is the sign that an army seeking vengeance is coming from the capital." That is what all the noise is about. And that is why the guard was able to reach her so easily. "Thank you. You have helped me very much," Maomao said with sincere gratitude. If she had been stuck in here, things could have turned ugly. "All right, well, I am out of here," the man said. "One last word of advice if you are open to it. Directly across from here is a stairway that leads down, but you want to avoid it. Lots of bad stuff happens down there and it is well traveled. If you are going to run, stay clear of the stairs. Work your way to the stables and steal a horse or something. Bad stuff. I think they are making fire powder. You will know it right away. It stinks to high heaven." Maomao's eyes glinted. "Thank you again, I will be going." "Hey, were you even listening to me?" The man shouted, but Maomao ignored him and headed directly for the basement. Maomao worked her way down the stairs, keeping one hand against the cold wall. The stones carried the vibrations of whatever was happening deeper down. When she finally glimpsed the lower level, she discovered several dozen men at work. Their outfits left their shoulders bare. She detected a distinctive aroma, not the burning of sulfur so much as the fermentation of animal feces. This was the source of the odor that had occasionally drifted upstairs to her. There was a pile of black clumps. Was it farm animal dung? Maomao wondered. But it was too small for that, closer in size to rat pellets or the droppings of some other small creature. She had heard that wild animal droppings could be used to make saltpeter. Was that what they were doing with it? The basement was warmer than she expected. They were probably keeping the temperature up to help dry out the fire powder they made. It was frankly terrifying. There was a fire pot some distance away, and it was surrounded by a curtain to keep sparks from flying. But what if a spark caught anyway? Did the men working down here fully understand how dangerous this environment was? Breathing this air for too long would eventually become toxic, even if nothing exploded. It was not a very good place to work. The finished fire powder was being carried out through another exit. As she stood watching, Maomao heard footsteps behind her. She quickly hid behind a nearby shelf. Her heart was pounding in her ears so hard she was afraid whoever was passing by might hear it. When she finally saw who it was, she could only stare. It was Shisui, and he looked grim. Perhaps it would have been more appropriate to call her Lulan, dressed as she was in an ostentatious outfit much like her mother's. She looked wildly out of place in the gloomy basement. It reeked of excrement. Maomao started to call out to her, but Lulan didn't seem to hear. There was something fierce in her eyes as she walked into the basement. The men began to murmur as they noticed her. One of the men stepped forward uneasily. He must have been the foreman. "Young master, get out of here now," Lulan said. Her voice rang around the underground room. The men looked at each other, unsure what was going on. This fortress will fall soon. "I want you men to leave before it does." She took a large pouch from the folds of her robes and tossed it to the ground. Silver coins spilled out, drawing the men's attention. They started jostling each other to grab the money. Once Lulan was satisfied that all the coins had been claimed, she took the lantern she was holding. She raised it above her head and flung it as hard as she could. She can't be serious. The lamp arced through the air and landed square in the drying fire powder. "All right, get out of here." "If you can," she said, her innocent smile still on her face. Maomao immediately covered her ears and flung herself to the ground. Her palms were hardly enough to blunt the roar that assaulted her eardrums. Several of the men kicked or stepped on her as they scrambled to escape. The explosions spread, first the charcoal and then the animal dung catching fire. "I have got to get out of here, fast," Maomao thought. But at just that moment, she saw someone take a dramatic sidelong stumble. Several pairs of feet stepped on the exquisite cloth of the figure's outfit, sullying it. Maomao grabbed the person's hand and pulled. "Oh, what are you doing here, Maomao?" Lulan asked. "I thought you were in one of the cells." Lulan looked at her with perplexity, her hair thoroughly disheveled. No, it didn't seem like Lulan. In this moment, her innocent demeanor made her look like Shisui. "I'd like to ask you a similar question," Maomao said with a touch of annoyance. Then Lulan reached out and brushed her cheek near her right ear. "Are you all right? Are you not hurt? My guard helped me. And the snakes were delicious, thank you." Maomao understood that it had been deliberate. The way Lulan had suggested the Taban as punishment ended up being a part of her plan in its own small way. And Maomao had not had snake meat for a while. She appreciated it. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Although I did expect the punishment would suit you." She did not know what Maomao meant. This from the girl who happily ate bugs, Maomao thought. But it did not matter. At the moment, they had to hurry and get out of there. "We are getting out of here fast." Maomao pressed her sleeve against Lulan's mouth and started looking for some way to sneak out of the basement. Intending to escape the fortress as quickly as she could, she tried to drag the other woman along. Lulan went to start up the stairs. "The fire is only going to spread," Maomao said. "That is all right. I have to go up there." Then Lulan ascended the steps, her battered skirt trailing behind her. Smoke was billowing now, flooding Maomao's nose and making her eyes water. If the fire didn't get them, toxic fumes would. "Wait, you're coming. I can't believe I'm this stupid," Maomao thought, then said, "I guess." It would have been simple enough for Maomao to escape on her own. The men from earlier were already heading for the stronghold's exit, pushing and shoving to be the first one out. "If my mother finds out, it won't be pretty. I know her, she will want to know how this happened, even if it means staying around. We will be lucky to get off with a little whipping." Lulan looked downcast. She did not seem like someone talking about her own mother. "It looks like she treasured you growing up, at least, Lulan." Lulan had said something before about being beaten if she could not tie hair or give a massage properly. It was hard to imagine that happening to someone of her status. "My mother, she can't even remember my real face." Lulan had been painted with rouge and face whitening powder almost as far back as she could recall. Whatever happiness or grief she had shown was for her mother, as if she were a doll. She seemed to be wearing a mask. Before she was 10 years old, she learned about her older sister. This happened when one of the maids died after a particularly harsh beating from Lulan's mother. Her father then took in the woman's child. When Lulan saw her mother confront her father, her hair was everywhere, like an enraged devil's. She was convinced she was seeing hell itself. Lulan said, "Mother was always cruel to my older sister." She realized that Shenmei must have been equally brutal to Suhari's mother, leading to the woman's death. And then she learned why Shenmei hated her older sister so much. The sister had asked if he intended to make a fool of her, with both mother and child. She said the daughter was like her mother, a woman who would do who knows what. It was the strangest thing to see someone in such gorgeous clothing say such filthy words. Could Suhari be? Maomao remembered what Shenmei had said when she licked Suhari's blood. Didn't you hear any rumors about it at the rear palace? There was a palace woman. She had been the former emperor's first victim, and her child was taken from her. That woman was my older sister's grandmother. She died alone and forlorn in the rear palace. People said that in her later years, her one pleasure was gathering spooky stories. Do you remember when everyone almost suffocated telling scary stories? It might have been that old lady's doing. After my mother did such terrible things to her, how could she not revile me, her daughter? Lulan chuckled. We can't even say if ghosts really exist, Maomao replied. There was no way to know. At least that is how she saw it. Why am I not surprised you would say that? Lulan said, grinning. I really wanted to see my older sister. Sometimes I would sneak over to her place dressed as a maid. Mother never recognized me and she made me work. Lulan, though, was not naturally trained in these tasks, and she often felt the sting of Shenmei's folding fan. She went to see her sister despite the blows she had received. Shenmei never realized whom she was disciplining. She saw only a lowly servant girl, not her precious doll who always obeyed her. Do you know why my mother and father got married? Lulan asked. They simply wanted to create me. My father carried the blood of the hidden village, supposedly the same bloodline as Wang Mu. Maomao thought back to the fox masks. Lulan had painted a pattern on hers, resembling a mercurial tanuki. Perhaps for her the world of colors was the same as it had been for Wang Mu. Mother kept telling me that their desire was for me to become a new Wang Mu. With that, Lulan stopped in front of a room on the 3rd floor. If Maomao parted ways with her now, she would never find out what Lulan was planning. She wanted to know. Hey, Maomao paused for a second, unsure how to continue. Was she speaking to Lulan or Shisui? She wasn't sure, but in her own mind she knew who this woman before her was. And so she said, Shisui. Yes, Shisui asked, smiling. Her hand was on the door. I know there were substances floating around the rear palace designed to induce a miscarriage. Did you keep some on hand too? Shisui was still smiling. To use on yourself? Shisui's expression didn't change. She simply opened the door. You really are a sharp one, Maomao. I knew it was the right choice to bring you here. Maomao thought back to the scary story Shisui had told. It was about the insects with the bell-like cry. They were a kind of bug Shisui had caught at the rear palace once. The apothecary who worked here before had written a lot about these creatures in their books. You could keep them in a cage and they made a beautiful sound. However, in the autumn the bugs would eat one another. The female would eat the male. It was part of their reproductive cycle. That seemed to be the point of Shisui's story, but why had she chosen to tell that tale at that time? Maomao thought she knew now. She was talking about herself. If she became pregnant, she would devour the child's father. The cage was the rear palace. The male and female insects were the emperor and his women. It wasn't a very respectful allegory, but it certainly fit. Shisui had feared this. Near the area where she had been catching bugs there were lantern plants and white blossom. These were ingredients for an abortifacient. They entered the room. There was a large bed with children sleeping on it. Kai Ruyu was there too. He alone was on the floor. He must have rolled off, Maomao thought. She hated to wake them, but they had to get the kids out of there. She walked over to the bed and stopped. What was this? Something was wrong. Saliva was running from the kids' mouths. Their hands clutched at the sheets. Their skin was cold. Maomao took one of them by the wrist and felt for a pulse. He is not breathing. There was a pitcher on the table by the bed and enough cups for all the kids. Shisui, her eyes full of compassion, came over to the bed, reaching out to touch the children. Maomao, furious, raised her hand dramatically upward, but she fought the urge to bring it down on Shisui. You poisoned them, it was medicine. Maomao squeezed her trembling hand into a fist. We've shown our hand now, Shisui said. Can't you see it? Our entire clan will be executed. Even the little children would be included. They too would be led to the gallows, not understanding what their parents had done. I mixed it with some nice sweet juice for them. We were in a nice warm room after we had all enjoyed looking at a picture scroll together. I wonder if any of them were upset about it. Perhaps they wanted to sleep with their mothers. I am sorry, little ones. Your mothers were friends with mine. Kairu arrived late. He must have been trying to help you, Maomao. A hint of a smile appeared at the edges of her lips. I think he might have known. I saw him bite his lip, but he drank all his juice anyway. I really did not want to bring him here. And why did you bring me here? Shisui smiled as if Maomao ought to know. I had hoped there would be another way to get you here, but it just did not work out. So that is how it was. Maomao let her hand drop. A heavy thud came from outside, but she could not look away from Shisui's face. They say mother was not always like this, but she wonders. It is how she has been ever since Maomao was born, at least. She would torment my older sister whenever she saw her. She also tormented the young ladies in waiting. She taught her female relatives to drink and to behave immodestly with men. Father never said anything to her. He could never go against her will. He was simply waiting for her to forgive him. Shisui's mother, Shenmei, was considered insane. It was clear to see. She is like an insect, consuming her husband after a child is born. In fact, the bugs are better. At least they do it so their children can survive. Shisui hated the idea of becoming a mother so much so that she would concoct and consume her own abortifacients. Maomao sensed she was learning the most important reason for this. Not all mothers were like Shenmei, but Shenmei was the only mother Shisui had. I took the liberty of learning a little something about your background, Maomao. It seems like your upbringing was that different from my sister's. This meant perhaps that she had been raised by a former physician, or that her birth father was a high official. I do not have a father or a mother. Just my adoptive father, Maomao said. My sister says the same thing. Well, I guess that makes sense. She keeps saying she is not my big sister. What was Shisui getting at? I guess she is right. There is no way she can be my sister. Our father is a tanuki. I am sure he has some grand plan trying to get his hands on the emperor's bloodline. Is she saying she had no connection to the Shi clan? What a liar. Shisui was in fact much like Suhari, particularly with the expressionless look she now wore. Shisui adored her older sister, but at this moment she denied that the relationship existed. If only these little ones were bugs, Shisui said, her hand brushing the children once more, they might have been able to sleep through the winter. Yes, if they were bugs, Maomao understood. She understood now why Shisui had brought her here. Maomao looked at her saying nothing. There was a hint of tears in Shisui's eyes. Maomao was about to reach out to her, but Shisui shook her head. She could run away as well, Maomao thought. But even Maomao had no idea what Shisui could do after that. She knew very little about politics and she couldn't have cared less about the subject. She just wanted to learn as much as she could about medicine. She wanted to research and study it and invent different drugs. That was all she wanted out of life. It should have been enough. She wanted to forget about other people. Put yourself first. What had they thought would happen bringing her here? And yet Maomao reached out her hand. Shisui rebuffed her. I have my own part to play. Please do not stop me. Is there some meaning to this? Maomao did not know where Shisui was headed, but the outcome was easy enough to imagine. It was stubbornness. Mine, just forget about that. Shisui smiled mischievously. Think of it this way, Maomao. Say you were presented with a poison you had never seen before and you were told you only had one chance to try it. What would you do? I would drink it down to the last drop, she replied immediately. What other answer could there be? Shisui thought so. She stood up, smiling, and went to leave the room. Her steps were as light as if she were simply going out to go shopping. She is leaving. Maomao did not know what to do. She had no idea what this moment called for. She tried to find the right words, but nothing came out. She could only reach out and grab Shisui's hand. At least let me offer a prayer. A prayer? That's not like you, Maomao. Every once in a while, every once in a blue moon. Maomao took the hair stick from her own hair and placed it in Shisui's collar. You know that's not my hair, right? If I put it in your hair you'd just be too pretty. Shisui's head was already bristling with hair sticks. These accessories were said to keep away evil spirits, but so many at once seemed likely to attract them instead. Give it back to me sometime. It was a gift. You are silly. I am going to sell it. That is fine then. This particular hair stick was plain, yet it was of uncommonly fine make. The person who had given it to her could be quite obstinate. Therefore there was a good chance that just like its original owner, it would somehow find its way back to her. You have some soot on you. Maomao held up a mirror from beside the bed. Oh, you are right. I look like a tanuki. Shisui laughed, then she looked at Maomao. You know what you need to do. She turned away. The door shut with a clack. Her footsteps became softer and softer in the distance. Maomao found herself looking at the ceiling, not really knowing why.